So as the NFL season winds to a close here with Week 18, the Pro Bowl rosters have been announced. There's quite a few interesting names, quite a few interesting omissions. As a Seahawks fan, I have a decent amount to say about my team, and perhaps not all positive, but we'll get to that eventually. We'll kind of go through each segment. We've got offense and defense for AFC and offense and defense for the NFC. We'll just kind of go through, talk about anything we find notable, any players who we think we should have been included, any players we're surprised that were included, and we'll go through like that. So, Simon, we'll start off with the AFC offense. Is there anything that kind of jumps out to you about that roster?
Um, Not really, to be honest with you. Like, it just seems like a lot of obvious ones. The one thing that I pointed out to you before the podcast was the Travis Kelsey pick, because I felt like all year I've been hearing that he's just been having a down year, but I guess I was wrong on that one. Other than that, I mean, I don't have much to be mad about here. It seems like pretty clear cut, at least to me.
Yeah, I think the ones that are with Kelsey, I think it's again because we kind of talked about this before the podcast. Kelsey being the starter is a little bit interesting because he definitely has been having a down year. That's been a big thing that he hasn't really performed up to the standard, and that's part of why the Chiefs aren't doing as well because Mahomes doesn't have any receivers, and he doesn't have Kelsey as the same level of safety blanket. He's kind of showing a little bit of his age, and he's not playing quite to the same level. But he's still I'm it's one of those selections I'm not totally mad about because I'm like, who do you replace him with? Is the
Yeah, and
question.
and that is the
The
tough thing.
only the
And
only other player I can think of is like like Mark Andrews on the Ravens, but he's injured. Um, Maybe like if you're looking for more deep cuts, like Pat Freiermuth on the Steelers. But other than that, you're not looking too far. I would maybe switch around Njoku and Kelsey to get Njoku as the starter, but other than that, it doesn't look too bad.
yeah, I feel
That's
like
not
I've heard a
that's
lot
one
more
I
about Njoku than I have Kelsey this year. That's other than the Taylor Swift shit. But like, that's more why I'm shocked
he's
about
been having
Travis
a
Kelsey.
fantastic year.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm more
He's
shocked
been
about the
having a
Travis Kelsey.
fantastic.
I feel like I've been hearing more about him off the field than I have on it, which just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, they couldn't really leave him out, I guess, right? Like, that's one of those picks where, like, it's hard to leave him out just because of the year he's been having, having off the field.
Because
But
well, and he's still the other thing is, like, it's another thing I said to you before the podcast. It's a down year for Travis Kelsey is still a fantastic year for anybody else.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so, like, Travis Kelsey still has, I believe, the second highest receiving yards for a tight end this year, only behind George Kittle. So, he's still having a decent season. It's just normally we wouldn't even see him second place. That's the kind of thing where it's like he is having a down year for his standards, but um, in terms of everybody else, it's still not shocking that he gets that spot. Because the other Evan Ingram potentially could have got the spot, but I don't know if he's been that consistent in order to get that. And Joku is also up there, and after that, in terms of AFC tight ends, it's not there's not really any other competition. So that
Yeah.
makes sense in terms of that choice.
Yeah, and fair enough. Like, I think, like I said, it's pretty clear cut. Like, the best are the best. You're not going to be shocked by a lot of the major picks on here. I think, I don't know. I feel like, I guess this is where my NFL casual is going to come out a little bit on how little I've been able to watch this year, but I feel like I haven't heard a lot about Amari Cooper. Like, unless he's just been having an incredible
Amari
year
Cooper
behind
has
the
had a
back.
fantastic
Okay,
year.
well, there you go.
Yep.
Like, that's the one that sticks out to me. It's just
He
like, I feel like I hadn't heard a lot about him, but
he
again,
recently set the Browns single game receiving yards record.
well, there you go. Shows how little I've paid attention this year. But
Yeah,
like, other than that,
yeah,
like you said,
285 receiving yards in a game on Christmas Eve.
well, there you go. Like, it's
He's had 1,250 yards on the year so far, 5 touchdowns.
yeah, and that sounds about right. Like, it's just, other than that, nobody on this list really sticks out to me as somebody we really need to be that shocked about. Like, it's just, these are the best guys in the NFL.
Well, there's one, and I'll pose this question to you, Simon. Um,
Okay.
I have my own opinion on this, but do you think that Mahomes should be in the Pro Bowl?
Right. Okay. So I'd have to pull up his stats. I
Because
do not have
Tua
them
and
in front
Lamar
of
are
me.
Tua and Lamar are pretty solidified. The ones that you're probably looking at are is that guy like Josh Allen.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Josh
that's
Allen
been
is
the
probably the
conversation all year
no.
long about the fact that Patrick Mahomes just hasn't been having as good of a year, right? So I think, I mean, I don't know. Like, what type of season has Josh Allen been having, I guess? Because I don't have his stats in front of me
He
currently.
It's been, I mean, it's been like the Bills season. It's been very up and down, but he's still, I think the stats don't fully tell the whole story, in terms of Josh Allen because he's still been kind of willing his team to wins a lot of the time. Because the other thing you have to think about is the Chiefs have a significantly better defense than the Bills do, and so that's kind of been propelling them to a lot of wins. Um, I think performance-wise, I think Josh Allen has outplayed Mahomes, and I do think the Mahomes name kind of got him that spot. If I'm being honest, I do think Josh Allen probably should have made it in over Mahomes, even though I think Josh Allen's interception numbers are pretty rough this year. Um, it's
Yeah.
still kind of I think outweighed by just the overall, like if you're watching the games from week to week, he's putting a little bit more out there for you in terms of actually providing a good contribution to his team.
Yeah, and looking at Mahomes, it's about what I expected. Not even 30 touchdowns on the season. Like, it's just a down year for him. Like, he just hasn't looked like Mahomes, right? And that's the big thing. Where, like, if you're we just I think at this point we've just learned to expect more from him. And at certain points this year, he's just been bad. Like, it's as simple as that. He's just not been good. And I don't know. I guess I'm curious on, it'd be hard to leave him out, I guess. Like you said, Josh Allen is the main other pick. Like, is there anybody else that you can really think of that would maybe be able to take that spot from him?
Uh, Honestly, this is a little bit tougher. I could say my only other the difficult thing about quarterbacks this year is that a lot of them have been injured. So
Yeah.
I'm like, if I'm looking at a lot of these other teams and I'm thinking who are the star quarterbacks, they've either had in the AFC, they've either had down years or have been injured. Like Justin Herbert injured. Um, you're looking at Joe Burrow injured, obviously. You're
Yeah.
looking at even it's a little bit more of a stretch, but like Deshaun Watson injured. Trevor Lawrence is currently he's a little bit more kind of on the mend, and also has had a little bit less of a successful year, but also currently injured, and questionable to play in their next game. So it kind of limits your options. Josh Allen is the big one. That's the big snub. The other one, the only other one I could think would be C.J. Stroud. That would be my only other case I could make to put him over
Yeah.
a guy like Mahomes.
And that one's tough, right? Because he's had such an incredible rookie season, taking the Texans from one of the worst teams in the NFL to, do they have a playoff spot yet, or are they still fighting for it? I know they're
So
close.
they played their last game against the Colts, and that one is basically winning in.
Okay, and that's
If they
that's
if they
basically what
lose
I've heard.
if they lose they're out. If they win they're in, and they could still potentially steal the division from the Jaguars.
Jeez. Like, they're, I don't know. It feels weird to even have him out, right? Like, having three quarterbacks in this situation where there's not really anybody who jumps off the stat sheet at you is just kind of, I don't know. It feels a little odd. I'm definitely with you on that one, where it's like Patrick Mahomes is going to make it in because he's Patrick Mahomes, but he definitely hasn't had the type of season that we expect from him at this point. So, I don't
If
know.
there was any year for Mahomes to miss a Pro Bowl, it would have been this year. Because
Yeah.
I feel like that the Chiefs aren't a stupid organization. They know what the problems are. The problems are with the Chiefs are as obvious to anybody who's watched any of their games. It's that Mahomes has no weapons. When Rashee Rice is your number one targeted player, you have issues. They're gonna go out in the offseason. They're gonna get some more guys. They're gonna overhaul things, but yeah, it's it does show how consistent he's been over his career, and it's not like he's had. If you just look at the stats, it's not like it's the biggest kind of evil in the world, and I'd say he's probably quarterback 4, but I'd probably have a guy like Josh Allen in over him.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think in this type of situation where like really, I don't know. Like I agree with you. I think he just doesn't deserve. We can move on. I think we can move on to the rest of the players on this list because we have a lot of other things to touch on here. Do you want to move on to the AFC defense?
Sure.
Okay. Like, I guess we can start on your side because I feel like you're gonna have more to say on who sticks out to you on this one, on who deserves it, who doesn't. So, is there anybody who sticks out to you?
Um, a lot of these are, I'd say, I love seeing Kyle Hamilton get a spot. That feels like a great way to recognize a young player who's kind of been flying under the radar a little bit. Has gotten a lot more recognition in the later weeks, but he's been playing really well. First round pick from I think a couple years ago, has been fantastic. So it's great to see him get a spot. Um, Jalen Ramsey is an interesting addition on there, not because he doesn't deserve it, because I think he absolutely does. I think it just speaks to how well he's been playing because he earned that spot with after missing like the entire first half of the season with an injury. So that by itself is impressive. Sauce Gardner is an interesting one. That one I might debate a little bit. That feels like a little bit of a name recognition thing, just because he's not had the same season that he had when he was a rookie, but it's not to the point where I'm like I think he shouldn't deserve to be on there. It's Sauce Gardner. He's still played well. It's just not. I would maybe switch him out. I wouldn't have him as a starter like he is now. I'd switch him out for a guy like Jalen Ramsey. Other than that, like this AFC defense, it really goes to show you how talented this conference is as a whole. There's really no surprises on here, because it's like a lot of these are just like have been locked since the start of the season, right? Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, T.J. Watt, Patrick Surtain, Minka Fitzpatrick. You knew those guys were going to be on this roster, barring an injury from week 1, and they've backed it all up. So there's honestly not a lot I can talk about other than those few guys that I'm pleasantly surprised to see on there. There's no guys on there that I'm really like, oh, like they don't really deserve their spot, or I think that people have been snubbed. That's kind of where I'm sitting at.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. Just looking at it, I think that really reigns true with this team, though. Like, I think it's cool to see a lot of the newer names. You pointed out Kyle Hamilton. That's a really good one. It's a good mix of young players and like players who are kind of like no shit. Yeah, of course, Myles Garrett was gonna make it here. Of course, T.J. Watt was gonna make it here. I agree with you on that one. It's always nice to see a lot of these younger players get the opportunities, and I can't really think of anybody who really got snubbed, at least no one that sticks out to me, so I'm not mad about it at all. I don't have as much to say on this, I don't think.
Yeah, it feels like the out of all of the sides of the ball we're going to talk about in terms of like AFC offense, NFC offense, like all that stuff, this feels like the most no-brainer. Like,
yeah,
it's a pretty clear.
Yeah, for sure. Well, where do you want to move here next? Do you want to go straight to NFC offense?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that. Like,
oh boy, okay.
Yeah, this one I feel like I was gonna say because we're both Seahawks fans. I think we're both gonna have more to say on what's going on in the NFC.
Brock Purdy, nasty. Yeah. So okay, like obviously Brock Purdy's had a fantastic season, but putting him as the best quarterback in the NFC, like I don't know, man. I've had this debate again and again and again. Brock Purdy, I don't think is anything fantastic. I think if you put Brock Purdy on any team other than the Niners, he's going to kind of completely crash and burn. It's the Kyle Shanahan thing, right? Kyle Shanahan is a fantastic coach, and as much as I hate to admit it, probably the best in the league. I think if you put me back there, I could probably throw for like 2,000 yards just because of how great his system is and how good he is at scheming up like these freaks of nature he has back there in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. So it is kind of interesting.
Weapons, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting for me. Wide receiver Pro Bowl nods are always kind of rough because there's so much talent at the position that having only four spots feels like you're gonna be inevitably leaving someone out. Um, so I'm like, I would almost rather have a guy like Brandon Ayuk who has been having a fantastic season, or Deebo Samuel, a little bit less so. I'd probably put Ayuk in over Deebo, but seeing Ayuk in there over a guy maybe like Mike Evans, that would be probably what I'd like to see in terms of 49er selections. Brock Purdy deserves to be in there. He's had a great season. I just don't think he deserves to be the starter. A guy like I think Dak Prescott kind of deserves that spot over him. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's anything that jumps out to you about this roster, Simon. That's
Well,
kind of what catches my eye as a Seahawks fan.
yeah, I don't know. Nothing too crazy, I don't think. I think it's going to be you who's going to have a lot more to say on a lot of these. I've been hearing you pointed out the wide receiver room being a pretty competitive section of the NFC this year, and that's what I've been hearing online. A lot of people are mad about Amon-Ra St. Brown not making it over Puka Nakua, which is a conversation we kind of had before, just about how the fact that you can't really leave Puka Nakua off this roster, I don't think, especially after the season he's having. As of right now, this podcast should come out before they play, I believe, but he's like 30 or 40 yards off the record, which is pretty
Yeah.
bonkers. It would feel very strange, I think, to leave him off the roster. That's for sure.
He absolutely deserves to be on there. With the kind of season he's had as a guy who is technically the second receiver on the roster, like absolutely fantastic. I hate the Rams with the passion of 1,000 suns, but even I wouldn't be able to say, yeah, no, you put Amon-Ra St. Brown in there over Puka Nakua. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a great player, but there's four wide receivers. It's the four best receivers. CeeDee Lamb, absolutely. AJ Brown, absolutely. Mike Evans would be the one I'd argue, honestly. He's had a really good season, but it's it's a tight competition. He'd be the one who I'd be kind of pushing out there. I think Puka Nakua definitely, as a case, is the third best receiver in the NFC this year. But it's tough because there's so many talented players at receiver. I think there's more talent at receiver than there is any other position in the league, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Um, I think I have two more points. The rest of this feels pretty chalky. The offensive line is always like, okay, yeah, Trent Williams, Lane Johnson, Penei Sewell, cool. The rest of these guys are all pretty chalky picks, and
Yeah.
it's all like the mainstays that have been there for 10 years. Zach Martin, Jason Kelsey, no shit. Like we know they're going to be there. I think the two questions I'd have for you, Simon, is one, what do you think about? I'll start with this. What do you think about the inclusion of Matthew Stafford as the third quarterback over potentially some other players? You've got Jalen Hurts, potentially. You've got Baker Mayfield as a surprise pick, or a guy like Jared Goff, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Stafford's another guy who I haven't heard a lot about this season. 24 and 11 on the year. Not bad numbers, nearly 4,000 yards. Like I don't know. Obviously, there's the conversation of the wide receivers he keeps churning out into incredible players. Obviously, like with the season Puka Nakua's having, obviously he has to have a pretty good quarterback thrown to him to have a season like that. But I mean, it's not bad. It's a little shocking, I guess, just because he's another. Like I said, he's another guy who I feel like I haven't heard about. Like it feels like this is the first time I've heard Matthew Stafford's name in a minute, and in that sense, it feels a little weird. But I mean, if he's having a good enough year, he's having a good enough year, right? It just comes down to that.
And I think he has. I brought it up because I do think it's one that's kind of borderline, but I agree with the decision. Like Jalen Hurts, is the other big name quarterback, but he obviously, with how the Eagles have just had the bottom completely fall out on them, which isn't all Jalen Hurts' fault, but I understand why that can lead you to say he probably doesn't deserve a Pro Bowl nod at this point. Um, yeah, Stafford's at the point where he is just executing everything to perfection. Like he is a perfect, like one of the prettiest balls you'll see from a quarterback. Like his ball placement is excellent. Like just he looks so comfortable in that Sean McVay system at this point. It's not that surprising to me, but yeah, I
It's one of
think
those
before the
picks that
season,
I guess, yeah, that's a really good way to put it, actually. Before the season, it would have felt very odd, but now it's kind of like, well, I mean,
and the competition also isn't very stiff. Is
that's
the other
also a
thing.
very good point.
Jalen Hurts
Yeah.
would be the only other one, but the bottom's dropped out of that whole team. That whole team is in complete free fall, so it doesn't shock me. And then Baker Mayfield is a sneaky one. If Because they always have Pro Bowl like alternates, right? I don't even know if those have been announced yet, but they always have like, um, let's say Dak Prescott and the Cowboys go to the Super Bowl. Dak Prescott can't play in the Pro Bowl. I would love to see a guy like Baker Mayfield take a spot because I think Baker Mayfield has had a sneakily fantastic season, and I've been. You can go back to the first episode of this podcast we've done.
That's true.
I have been a Baker Mayfield supporter since day one, and I felt
Oh.
like he got a bad rap, and he had like he
If
has
you've been
throwing-
around
he
since
has been
Baker Mayfield
significantly-
versus Kyle Trask, leave a
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah, absolutely. But honestly, like I think that he deserves his flowers a little bit because it's another name recognition thing, right? Because I do think like a lot of these choices have been made like well, like putting a guy like Puka Nakua in who's literally a rookie, like it shows that voters know what they're doing at least a little bit in terms of actually watching the games this season and seeing who the best player actually is. But there is a name recognition thing to some of this. And Baker Mayfield's name has been not associated with good quarterback play for the last 2 or 3 years. But I think it's time for that to change because he has been a better quarterback for the Bucs than Tom Brady was, at least in the last couple of years of his tenure. So
That's 28 touchdowns,
had a
10 picks, almost 4,000.
he has had a better connection with Mike Evans than Tom Brady did his entire time in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
If you look at Mike Evans' receiving stats, that shows up. So
And I mean,
I'd
looking
love to
at the numbers, I
to
don't
make a
disagree
case
with
for
you.
my guy Baker.
Yeah, I mean,
He's had a sneakily fantastic season, and remember what people were saying about this Bucks team. I saw everybody projecting, including me, frankly.
yeah,
Even
yeah.
though I was a Baker believer, I didn't predict them to be doing very well. I don't think you did either, Simon. Everybody kind
Probably
of wrote
not.
them off, and now they are basically they're not in the playoffs yet, but all they have to do is beat the Panthers. That's
They're
probably
in the
going to come back
playoffs.
to bite me, and they're going to lose. But that's
Yeah.
they're basically in the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I mean, I
Like,
get what you mean.
isn't that such a that'll be that's my case. I see them putting in Matthew Stafford over him. I'm okay with that. But if one of those three guys, which they
Yeah.
probably will, one of those three guys goes to the Super Bowl, put Baker in.
Yeah.
Just do it. That's my
No,
biggest
I like
case.
those picks. I like that opinion too. Like, he's having one heck of a year. It's hard to really have anything against him at this point. Like, he really. I mean, is there anybody else you can really think of offensively who is gonna have a better shot at comeback of player of the year over Baker?
Well, the comeback player of the year was decided last December, so
I guess.
with DeMar Hamlin.
I guess.
Also Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco. is
Oh,
another
that's a
one
good
that
point.
could-
Yeah, Joe Flacco's another really good pick. I guess that's a very good.
But
point.
I do
He's
think
gonna have
I
some
do
tough
think Baker
competition, but-
Mayfield should. I do think Baker Mayfield should win that award.
Yeah.
But before we move past the offense, I do just want to say one thing about the running backs. I think they're all perfect choices. Like I'm not going to debate against any of these. CMC, DeAndre Swift, Kyron Williams. It's just really frustrating that the Seahawks haven't been good enough to let Kenneth Walker get a spot. Because I do think, honestly, Kenneth Walker, as someone who has, I don't think the stats show it this year because he's been injured and the Seahawks run blocking has been absolutely atrocious. But in terms of all of the running backs that I've seen in a Seahawks jersey, including Marshawn Lynch, he is the most talented running back that I've ever seen play for this team.
Wow.
I think just in terms of Marshawn Lynch wasn't about that kind of
He wasn't
action.
talented.
He
It
was
more like-
he was a bulldozer.
Yeah.
He will truck you and he's not going to go down. But in terms of elusiveness in open space,
Well, even
and
going
just turning
into
something out of nothing.
Yeah, even going when he was entering the NFL, the comparison was Saquon. Like his whole career, it feels like people have been comparing him to Saquon a little bit, and
I
like
think if Kenneth Walker was in a bigger market behind a little bit better of an offensive line, he'd have that spot locked up and would be among the top like 5 running backs in the league. It is a little bit upsetting how bad our run blocking this year is, just to completely overshadow him. He has been the best player on that offense in Seattle. DK Metcalf may have an argument against him, but I would have loved to see him get a Pro Bowl nod. The issue is all of those guys have just frankly put up better numbers and had better performances this year.
and he's got plenty of time.
A lot of that has to do with the running back. A lot of that has to do with the run blocking that he's getting, because Seattle literally doesn't block anybody on any play, which is why I'm losing all my hair, frankly, after watching them play for this long. But
You want to move to defense?
that'll be my yeah. We can move on to defense. I wanted to
Okay.
give my boy K9 a shout out before we go in,
Yeah,
'cause
for sure. I mean, every time
it's-
I've watched him,
it's a little
he's
upsetting he
super
doesn't get his flowers.
athletic. Yeah. For
Yeah.
this defense, we talked a bit before. I think you had a couple things you wanted to point out. So I think
Yep.
I'll just give you the opportunity to hit on a lot of those.
Okay, so I am a Seahawks fan, if you didn't know. But that doesn't mean I want this Pro Bowl team to be full of entirely Seahawks, because I don't think that's fair. If I'm looking at this roster, I'm thinking of this Seahawks defense, and I'm thinking especially of them against Pittsburgh last week, where I saw this defense, Seahawks defense get absolutely massacred by fucking Mason Rudolph, and basically lose their playoff spot because of that, because of how bad this defense is. For this defense to have 3 Pro Bowlers, that doesn't sit right with me. Devin Witherspoon is the only one that I'm like, that is absolutely warranted, and I think he should be even ahead of Deron Bland and Charvarius Ward, who I do think are good picks. But I do think Witherspoon has played better this year. And if he hadn't gotten injured and missed these last few games, I think he would be a little bit more in that conversation. And I think that injury is probably going to prevent him from being Defensive Rookie of the Year, that hurts me on the inside. Because Devin Witherspoon has been the best player on this defense by far this season. So he's a good pick. The other 2 are where it's upsetting. Bobby Wagner is not playing at a Pro Bowl level. He is the biggest name recognition piece on this whole. Out of everything that we've gone through, Bobby Wagner is the biggest name recognition only, because he does rack up tackles still, but he is such a liability in coverage at this point because he is old and he is slow. He was never good in coverage to begin with, but he at least held up. But this time, like, we're getting picked apart over the middle because Bobby Wagner is playing 100% of the snaps and he can't cover anybody. So that feels like a little bit of an interesting placement for me. I think he's actually been one of the main problems with the Seahawks defense this year, rather than one of the things. So like, if you look at that, it's like, yeah, he like, you can look at those stats that Simon just put up on the screen. Tackles, absolutely. Bobby Wagner, that's his thing. That's why he's going to the Hall of Fame, and definitely should, because he's going to rack up those tackles. As a middle linebacker, that's your main job, right? But he is such a liability in coverage this year, even more so than he has been in the past, which is saying something, that he does not deserve to be a Pro Bowl linebacker. An article from The Score mentioned Demario Davis as somebody who could have gone in ahead of them. I absolutely could have seen that. I love Bobby. He's a Hall of Fame player. I just bought a Bobby Wagner jersey this year. I think he's fantastic. One of my favorite Seahawks players ever. So I don't say this to disrespect him, but I don't really think he deserves that spot with how he's played this year. And then the last one is Julian Love, who is, I think it's great in terms of, he's kind of a player who doesn't get a lot of recognition. I think it's frankly hilarious that Julian Love gets a nomination, because he was never intended to even start for us, because the only reason he's starting is because of how injured / bad Jamal Adams has been. So I think that's really funny that our safety we traded 2 first-round picks for is not the Pro Bowl one. But Julian Love has played really well this year and has frankly played above expectation. But I think he got a little bit buoyed by because a lot of this is recency bias, right? That fantastic game he had against the Eagles, he was defensive player of the week. That's where he got half of those 4 interceptions that you just put up on the screen.
Yeah.
And he's played really well. But it just feels like a little bit of an odd choice when you can put a guy in like Antoine Winfield above him. That's where I'm saying, because Antoine Winfield has been fantastic for the Bucks and has played at like an all pro level this year, and that's kind of where I'm like, okay, it's not as atrocious, I think, as putting Bobby Wagner in there when he's obviously been a liability. Julian Love, I think, deserves it. I think he's played better than a lot of people realize, but he's kind of taking up a spot that should maybe go to a more deserving safety. Those are my Seahawks rants. Other than that, this roster doesn't look half bad. The Seahawks are, other than Witherspoon, are honestly kind of what stands out like a sore thumb here. I don't know if you have anything to add about this NFC defense.
No, I think you hit on it pretty well. Like you said, Bobby Wagner, a little bit of an odd pick there. I was even thinking going into this year that he would not necessarily be the kind of player we'd seen in the past for a lot of obvious reasons. He's just not as good as what he used to be, and it definitely showed this year. So it feels a little odd. I definitely agree with you. Like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we could have had the conversation that Bobby Wagner and Fred Warner should be put on the same list. But now seeing them right next to each other feels very odd. So I don't disagree with you at all. If you wanna, do you wanna hit on special teams? Is there even a point? Most of these. Do you have any?
Oh
are you
boy,
mad
I can't wait. I have mad hot takes about the special teams. Actually, you know what I do? Screw the people who pick the special teams. Okay, so I mean Justin Tucker, yeah, that's fair. Okay, I don't care about the AFC. NFC.
Okay.
Okay, I have 2 takes about the NFC special teams. First of all, Brandon Aubrey, fantastic. Brandon Aubrey is a fantastic kicker and is probably going... If you don't know about Brandon Aubrey yet, he is the next, like, Justin Tucker type figure in the NFL. He has not missed a single kick in his entire time in the league yet.
Wow.
So that's amazing. He is closing in on the all-time... He already has the most consecutive kicks made to start a career, and he's closing in. I think he only needs about 10 more to hit the all-time record for like a kick streak.
Oh my god.
So he is fantastic.
How long has he been in the
Former
league now?
MLS player. This is his first year.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
He played in the USFL for the Birmingham Stallions
Right.
for 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. No,
And he was a first-round pick for the MLS's Toronto FC. And then when that didn't work out, that's when he found his way to football, which makes sense. If you're a good soccer player, you're probably a pretty decent kicker.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, that's not my special teams hot take though. My special teams hot take is Michael Dixon should be making the Pro Bowl every year. This is where my Seahawks homerism comes out. Michael Dixon is the best punter I've ever seen, and is fantastic. And it's like, I don't know who's voting in the punters. Like I don't know. Watch the games. Like I've watched enough Seahawks punting this year to really know how good Michael Dixon is. They punt all the damn time, so I know that Michael Dixon is a Pro Bowl punter. If I don't know. Has he made the Pro Bowl yet in his career? I don't even know. If he hasn't, he should have, because he is honestly one of the only things that keeps me sane about this team, because he routinely has just these rocket kicks that completely flip field position. Brian Anger, I don't know. I haven't heard about Brian Anger in like 10 years, buddy. Go back to I don't know what fucking punters. Anyway, that's my special teams hot take. Put Michael Dixon in the Pro Bowl every year. This is all this bullshit. Like last year, they put like the Lions punter in. I don't care.
This is about to go nuts, Caleb. With our new fancy garbage that allows me to put stuff on the screen, we can now look at punt stats. Let's go!
Okay, let's take a look. This is Michael Dixon punting stats.
This is Michael Dixon punting stats.
So yeah, it's like sixth best punt average. I guess that's only the thing you can look at. But look at that. Look like 73.
To be honest, can I be honest with you?
Insane.
He only has one thing over under 10th. Just pointed it out.
He is a watch the punters. Watch the punters. Y'all ain't grinding punter tape like I am. Get on my level.
Oh,
Michael Dixon only made the Pro Bowl in 2018 when I think he was a rookie. He should have made the Pro Bowl every year since then. He's absolutely fantastic.
shout out to all the punters out there. That's for you.
Punters are people too, maybe. We don't know.
We're not sure. The only thing I know about punters is apparently they play a lot of ping pong, but that's
Really?
apparently. I've heard that. Apparently there has been players who have come out whenever a kicker misses, I've heard players come out and go they spend too much time playing ping pong. They should be practicing more.
Really?
I've heard that comment
Wow.
made before.
Ping pong is fantastic, though. I honestly don't
It
blame
is.
him.
Oh yeah, ping pong's the shit. I'm not very good at it, but watching people who are very good at ping pong is a very satisfying thing to do. Like it is a lot of fun.
It's even
Like,
when you're not good. It's
There was a
fun.
point
It's so
where like
fun.
a lot of people I knew got really into tennis, and I never understood it. If a lot of people I knew got really into ping pong, I would understand that.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Yeah,
No,
ping pong is great. At my old junior high school, we had a door that would lead into like a dungeon in the basement that was filled with like 20 ping pong tables.
Oh, that's so
So
sick.
whenever we got to do that, that was like I was living the life.
I was gonna say that
like-
sounds awesome.
It was fantastic.
I remember
Absolutely fantastic.
there was a year for Christmas, my whole family just like fucking played like a ping pong tournament, and that was our Christmas. It was the shit. But yeah.
Sounds like the best Christmas you ever have. Like
Yeah. Okay. Well, next thing. Next segment.
end with punters and ping pong. Fantastic segment.
Oh yeah, big time. Who doesn't love punchers and ping pong?
It's the name of this podcast. So it's gonna be
Change
the
it
name of
to
this
punters
episode
and
today.
ping pong?
Punters and
I was gonna say
punters and ping pong? Question mark? Question mark? Question mark? All-time
God.
punters and ping pong.
I was about to say like the so in the industry I work in, there is a large thing about how I took a whole class on how to talk into a microphone, just to like basically throw it out there, and how to like talk in this. And there is something that is very well known called popping your P's, where if you're really bad at it, it'll really pop up. Like if you're like, "Hi, I am popping my P's." Can you hear that? Or is my mic taking it out? Like it'll like pop
yeah,
in the
yeah.
microphone, right? I'm terrible with it, which is why I pay attention a lot to my microphone placement when I'm doing any sort of announcing. But I was just thinking, God, that title would make half of my instructors roll in their graves. Like, like holy smokes. Anyway, let's move on.
Punters
We've been
and
talking about this for
ping pong.
40 minutes. Punters and ping pong. There you go.